committee will come to order. We have 6 judicial nominees and 1 U.S. attorney on our agenda, all of whom are ready for a vote. 2 bipartisan bills that will be held over, the S-4524 Speak Out Act, Senators Gillibrand, Blackburn, Hirono, Graham, Portman, and myself, and S-673 Journalism Competition and Preservation Act, sponsored by Senators Klobuchar, Kennedy, Booker, Whitehouse, Graham, Feinstein, Hirono, and myself as well. Happy to add this bipartisan bill to the agenda at Senator, pardon me, excuse me, Senator Klobuchar's request. I'm going to make brief remarks about one of our judicial nominees and then turn it to Senator Grassley. We'll proceed with votes on judicial nominees and U.S. attorney depending on attendance. As members know, we have an important oversight hearing with FBI Director Reyes that starts at 10. We may even start it earlier if he arrives earlier, so that members might be mindful as we go through this markup agenda. I want to speak briefly on the nomination of Rachel Blohmkatz, Sixth Circuit, accomplished appellate litigator, broad support, progressives and conservatives, graduated Harvard College, UCLA School of Law, clerked for 3 judges, including Justice Pryor in the Supreme Court, began a career as assistant AG in Massachusetts, before joining the Issues and Appeals practice at Jones Day. There she represented major corporate clients and also represented Marco Rubio on a Fourth Circuit amicus brief. Ms. Blohmkatz joined the law firm of Gupta Wessler before starting her own practice, focusing on appellate litigation, highly skilled, strong support across the spectrum. In fact, the committee's received multiple letters of support from those who self-identify as ideological conservatives. One letter signed by Benjamin Flowers, Republican Solicitor General of Ohio, Chris Walker, professor at the University of Ohio, who worked for our former colleague Orrin Hatch, states she has the right temperament to serve as an Article III judge. Ms. Blohmkatz also has support from the Ohio Fraternal Order of Police and from the chiefs of police at Dayton, Columbus, Youngstown, and other police departments. Unanimous rating of well qualified from the ABA. I believe she'd make an outstanding addition to the Sixth Circuit. With that, I'll turn to Ranking Member Grassley.
On our side, we're able to voice vote the U.S. Attorney. We've had requests for roll call votes on the other nominations, so I'll speak to a couple of those. I'll be voting against Judge Pryor's nomination. I've given a lot of consideration to this vote. She's worked as a prosecutor and served as a magistrate judge, but her answers during the hearing on whether she believed in the Constitution's meaning, whether that changes over time, bothers me. Despite several attempts, Judge Pryor wouldn't give a firm answer to that question. I've said before that circuit court nominees need to show that they'll enforce the law and Constitution as written. I don't think her testimony met that standard. I'll also be voting against Ms. Blohmkatz and Ms. Reyes. Both have a history of progressive litigation that raises concerns that there'll be activists on the bench. For example, Ms. Blohmkatz has praised judges' interpretation of law based on their own experiences, not interpreting the law as it was written. Finally, I'll be voting against Judge Mendez-Miro. Her testimony was also extremely concerning. She explained that she thought the Constitution gives Congress plenary power rather than enumerated powers. All she has to do is read Article 1 to know that that's not true. For that reason, I'll oppose her nomination. I yield.
Thanks, Senator Grassley. We're waiting for 2 members to come join us. I know they had a breakfast at the Pentagon. They should be here momentarily. We can turn to the U.S. Attorney nominee, which I understand we can consider by voice vote. That's Natalie K. Wright, nominated to be the U.S. Attorney for the District of Oregon. Does anyone wish to speak to this nominee? On favorably reporting the nomination of Natalie Wright to be U.S. Attorney, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, no. The majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, the ayes have it. the nomination will be favorably reported to the floor.
We have these senators that would like to be recorded no. Senators Hawley, Blackburn on this nominee.
Senators Hawley and Blackburn will be noted in the record as opposing the nomination of U.S. Attorney Natalie Wright for the District of Oregon. And kind of standing at ease here waiting for...
Mr. Chair, just
Senator
briefly, if
Tillis.
we can use the time. I understand my friend Senator Leahy is out and not able to be with us today as he continues his recovery. I intend to vote pass on 3 nominations today, but before any of my friends on the other side of the aisle think that that's an indication I'll be voting aye on the floor, I do intend to oppose him on the floor.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. We didn't expect an overall conversion, but we certainly appreciate your camaraderie for our friend Senator Leahy, who's on the mend. Anyone else seek recognition? I just ask the members to stand down and at ease, as close as I got to the military. We will now proceed with the judicial nominees, and I want to make it clear to everyone at the committee, if you have anything you want to say about any of the nominees, please get my attention. I'm going to defer to everyone who makes that request. But our first nominee is Rachel Blohmkatz. Does anyone wish to speak to her nomination? On favorably reporting the nomination of Rachel Blohmkatz to be U.S. Circuit Judge for the Sixth Circuit, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leahy.
Pass.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Grassley.
No.
Mr. Graham.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
No by proxy.
Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sass.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis. Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 10 yeas, 10 nays, and 2 passes.
The committee's recorded a tie vote on Ms. Blohmkatz's nomination to U.S. Circuit Judge for the Sixth Circuit pursuant to Section 3, subsection 1A of the Senate Resolution 27 of the 117th Congress. I'll transmit to the Secretary of the Senate a notice of this tie vote. Under Section 3, subsection 1B of that resolution, either the majority or minority leader may then make a motion to discharge the nomination. Up next is a nomination of Judge Doris Pryor to the Seventh Circuit. Judge Pryor spent nearly the entirety of her legal career in federal court. She attended the University of Central Arkansas and Indiana University Moore School of Law before clerking for Chief Judge Levinsky Smith on the Eighth Circuit and Judge Leon Holmes on the Eastern District of Arkansas. She served as Deputy Public Defender in Arkansas before joining the U.S. Attorney's Office as a prosecutor, where she worked on a wide variety of criminal cases. She also served as the office's National Security Chief for 4 years. In 2018, the district judges of the Southern District of Indiana selected her to serve as a magistrate. She's demonstrated a capacity for even-handed decision-making. This is an exceptional nomination I'd like to call to the attention of the committee. It was first brought to my attention by the African-American congressman from Indianapolis, and he asked if we could work with 2 Republican senators on the selection of someone to fill this judgeship. And I want to say that receiving blue slips from 2 Republican senators, in this case, Senators Young and Braun, is extraordinary in this committee, and I hope there'll be more evidence of that kind of cooperation. The ABA has unanimously rated her qualified to serve. Does anyone seek recognition to speak on her nomination? On favorable reporting that nomination for the Seventh Circuit, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leahy.
Pass. I'm sorry.
Aye by proxy.
Aye by proxy on Leahy.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Grassley.
No.
Mr. Graham.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
No by proxy.
Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sass.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis. Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 13 yeas, 9 nays.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Next is Judge Gina Mendez-Miro to the U.S. District Court for the District of Puerto Rico, received her BA and JD from the University of Puerto Rico, her MA from Princeton, years in private practice, and a legal career committed to public service. Worked in all 3 branches of Puerto Rican government, served on the Puerto Rico Court of Appeals, received a unanimous qualified rating from the ABA. Does anyone seek recognition to speak on this nomination? Senator Blumenthal.
I just want to say about these nominees to the federal trial court in Puerto Rico. The island has waited a long time. We should move forward. These nominees are all highly distinguished and very experienced, and I urge my colleagues to confirm them so that the District of Puerto Rico will be staffed adequately to handle the judicial workload there.
Thank you, Senator. On favorably reporting the nomination of Gina Mendez-Miro to be U.S. District Judge for the District of Puerto Rico, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leahy.
Pass.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Grassley.
No.
Mr. Graham.
I have a proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
No by proxy.
Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sass.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley. Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis. Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 11 yeas, 9 nays, and 2 passes.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Next is Maria Antongiorgi-Jordan, nominated to the District of Puerto Rico, BA from Seton Hall University, JD from Inter-American School of Law, and her LLM from Georgetown University Law Center. After graduating Georgetown, joined the law firm of McConnell Valdez. After 2 decades with the firm, she had a wide-ranging litigation practice, participated in 42 trials, chief or co-counsel in 36 of those, appointed to serve as Chief Deputy Clerk of the U.S. District Court for the District of Puerto Rico, promoted to Clerk of the Court. Ms. Antongiorgi-Jordan received a qualified rating from the ABA and has broad support. Anyone wish to speak to her nomination? On favorably reporting the nomination of Maria Antongiorgi-Jordan to be U.S. District Judge for the District of Puerto Rico, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leahy.
Aye, by proxy.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Grassley.
Aye.
Mr. Graham.
I have a proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
No by proxy.
Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sass.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis. Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 14 yeas, 8 nays.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Next is Anna Reyes, nominated to the District Court for the District of Columbia. First immigrated this country at the age of 5. She had to learn English. However, that quickly changed because of a teacher who took special attention and tutored her daily before school. From there, she was off and running. Had her BA summa cum laude from Transylvania University, her JD magna cum laude from Harvard Law School, clerk for the Second Circuit. She's built a complex international and litigation practice at Williams-Connolly, where she made partner in 2009. She's devoted more than 3,000 hours to pro bono work, received unanimous well-qualified rating from the ABA. She'd be the first Hispanic woman, first openly LGBTQ person to serve in the DC District. Does anyone seek recognition to speak on this nomination? If not, on favorably reporting the nomination, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leahy.
Pass.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Grassley.
No.
Mr. Graham.
I have a proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
No by proxy.
Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sass.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis.
Pass.
Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 11 yeas, 9 nays, and 2 passes.
Nomination be favorably reported to the floor. And finally, we're voting on Camille Velez-Rive, nominated to the District Court for the District of Puerto Rico, currently serves as District of Puerto Rico Magistrate. Over the past 18 years, presided over 26 trials that have gone to verdict or judgment. Also served as District of Puerto Rico as an Assistant U.S. Attorney as a prosecutor. 2 years in the Criminal Appeals Division, drafted 80 appellate briefs, argued 10 times before the First Circuit Court of Appeals, and for another 4 years, she handled approximately 65 cases in one bench trial in the Civil Division. Born and raised in Puerto Rico, earned her magna cum laude degree from the University of Puerto Rico Law School after receiving her BA with college honors from Washington University in St. Louis. Clerk for Justice Francisco Rebollo Lopez on the Supreme Court of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. She's been found to be well qualified by the American Bar Association. Does anyone seek recognition to speak on this nomination? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leahy.
Aye by proxy.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal.
Aye.
Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Grassley.
Aye.
Mr. Graham.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
No by proxy.
Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sass.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis.
Aye.
Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 14 yeas, 8 nays.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. This completes our business, and the markup is going to stand in adjournment until the appointed hour of 10 o'clock when the leader of the FBI will be before us. If he comes early, we'll start early. So I leave it to you to use your time accordingly, but for the time being, the committee stands in recess.